Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And unbelievably, I said something really stupid before we started, Bridget.
Did you really, Adrian?
Yes, really, Bridget, I really did.
Okay.
I said, this is our 52nd Sounding the Shallows, and isn't that a year? 52 weeks. But of course it's a year.
Of course it's
I've
a
known
year.
that all my life.
A whole year of doing weekly ones simply because we stopped doing daily ones because we thought we were nearly at shore. So Sounding the Shallows, we were nearly there, and it is a year.
It is a year, yeah.
But it has actually coincided with being quite a significant week in the UK because actually, for the first time, 0 deaths on one particular day. Nobody died from COVID on one particular day.
I didn't really know what to think about that. It was a sort of benevolent shock. But, I mean, so many people have died, sadly, and a lot of people are suffering so much from the effects of that. But it did seem like something you could actually put your hand around and hold on to and say this could be the end of a rope that leads us to somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some kind of safety.
Well, I mean, we're just not used to good news, are we? And suddenly there was some good news, and I think everyone was, oh, well, I don't know, but simply because of that, really. But it has meant that there are possibilities opening up. For us over here, hasn't it? That maybe, just maybe, the restrictions will be lifted, and already some people, maybe only really quite a few, are going on holiday abroad and meeting up with people. But of course, as soon as you get a bit of hope, there's the possibility of that hope being dashed, isn't there? So a little while ago, nobody was going anywhere. And now some people, because of this traffic light system, so some countries are on a green list and people can go and come back and just need a test. They're feeling that it's even increased. And just yesterday, on Thursday, some of those hopes were dashed because we were hoping that lots of other countries would be added to the green list. That's and right, actually none have.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure that was very disappointing for some people, but we're used to things not working out quite as we'd hoped. So
we are. And the other thing is that I think that we're hanging on to hope in all sorts of ways that maybe we wouldn't have done at other times. I mean, as you know, Adrian, I'm not that bothered about the football really, but the idea of, well, I do have having 3 sons and a husband, all of whom like watching football. I think I have done my time really in terms of watching football. But this week, with all the talk of the Euros, I find myself quite anxious about Trent Alexander-Arnold and whether he's injured. Well, I kind of am, Adrian.
Bridget, you haven't got the faintest idea what you're talking. Actually, you have picked it up. Yeah, you have picked up what's going on. I have,
and I mean the Olympics are just sort of hanging by a fragile golden thread, aren't they? That they are going to happen. Are they? Japan are having problems, but there is a promise.
It's like a dream. I think I enjoy the athletics at the Olympics more than almost anything.
Yeah.
And I would love it for that reason and for the sake of all the people who've worked so hard for 4 years.
Well, for 4 years, and then it might not happen. It didn't happen last year, and reaching their peak. And for some of the ones that have been doing it for a while, the possibility they might not have the chance again. It is pretty huge, isn't it? And I think it is one of the things we're pinning hope on.
Okay,
really.
Well, we knew we were going to do something about hope, and I've actually got the dictionary definition here, because you'll see why later on when we talk about the Bible's use of the word hope. But the normal definitions, predictable, a feeling of expectation and desire for a particular thing to happen. And they gave an example, didn't they?
Well, they do. I think this is quite an odd example to have in a dictionary, actually. He looked through her belongings in the hope of coming across some information.
I can't remember looking through your belongings hoping to come across some information. Anyway, synonyms. Lots of synonyms. Aspiration, desire, wish, expectation, ambition, aim, plan, dream, daydream, pipe dream. Always like that one. Longing, yearning, craving, and hankering. And there's an older definition, isn't there?
What, a very archaic one about trust. Yes, you read it.
Well, this is the example they give. Our private friendship, upon hope and affiance whereof, I presume to be your petitioner, which I would say is one of the least useful chat-up lines I've ever heard. But in those days, perhaps he went down a storm and she went to the pub with him. I don't know.
I'm really getting a bit worried about the person who's compiled these definitions, Adrian.
Well, there's more. There's
the
a verb.
Wants something to happen or be the case. Yeah. He's hoping for an offer of compensation.
Oh, well, there we are. More synonyms: expect, anticipate, look for, wait for, pin one's hopes on, want, wish for, dream of, hope against, hope for. And the normal use of the word hope, certainly in my mind, and I don't know, but I think many other people, would be something less than certainty. But I suppose a lot of people who are believers, whether they're Christians or whatever else, that hope has extra fuel, which is something to do with faith and expectancy connected with what they believe. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think so long as people don't go down the road of assuming that if you ask God for something, you're going to get exactly what you asked for, it always seems right to me to be like a child. And to have hope for the thing that you really want. And we do know one example, a really special one, don't we, of when that hope was fulfilled, and she prayed like Billy-O.
Yeah, it's a very moving memory. It was a mother who, at a very early stage in her life, knew that her life was going to end. And she had a daughter, really charming little girl.
She was only two when her mum was diagnosed.
And her mum said to us, she came to pray with us, and she said, "I just got one prayer, one desperate, hoping prayer. I would like to live long enough for my daughter to remember my face. That's what I want. That's all I want." She said, "If I can be healed, obviously that would be wonderful, but I want her to remember me."
Well, she wasn't healed, but she did have that opportunity, didn't she? In fact, for her daughter to get to a point of going to school and her able to go to the first nativity. So,
absolutely.
So from her point of view, it was fulfilled. And I think it was just a desire, and we were all just so thrilled that it did happen. But sometimes I think hope can be pretty blind. Did you, Adrian, I meant to ask you this before we started, did you ever play pinning the tail on the donkey when you were small?
I think I probably did. I don't remember it specifically, but I expect I did.
But you have a blindfold and you're given this tail with a pin on it, and the idea is that you pin it in the right place.
That's right,
And you know, there's a modern equivalent of that. I don't know if anybody listening to this watches Richard Osman's House of Games, but my favourite game is Where is Kazakhstan? And you have a tablet and you have to put where you think it is. And I find myself unbelievably ignorant, but I do seem to be in the company of most of the people who play the game. You kind of vaguely-ish know where somewhere is.
I think my geography is rubbish. That particular game really challenges me.
But it's the same, isn't it, of hoping that you win something, chance in a million in the lottery. And I mean, there is a term, isn't there? You hope against the odds. In other words, the odds are great for the opposite to what you're hoping for, but you're hoping for your little horse, your little whatever it is, your hope and dream, that even despite the fact that you've bought, I don't know, that sort of thing.
I was, this week, I happened to bring up on my computer an old book of mine. In fact, my first book, Growing Up Pains of Adrian Plass. And
it started as Join the Company.
That's right, it was Join the Company. And I'd forgotten. And there's a lot of autobiography in it, much more than I realised. But there's a bit about me wanting to marry Hayley Mills, which I think men of the same age as I am now, there have been many who will remember that they really wanted to
can you
marry Hayley
just tell
Mills.
people how old you were at the time?
I
It's
was
quite
13
really,
or 14. But what I wanted, it was such a burning fantasy, and I wanted to, I don't know, it was a feeling of, my hope in this case was fueled by a sort of mixture of fantasy and longing. And I read the extract. I will paraphrase this, but when I was about 13, I made the fatal mistake of trying to turn my hopeful fantasy into reality. And I happened to know, because I'd read about them, that the Mills family lived at Cowden, and this is pathetic. I got on my bike to go to Cowden, and my fantasy was, which people will laugh at, was that I got there and her bicycle tyre had gone flat.
Right.
I pedalled suavely onto the scene, not with a sword, but a pump.
Right.
She would be overwhelmed, and subsequently my natural charm and all that, at least in fantasy, was irresistible. And we'd marry, a large close-up, glistening tears, stirring music. And anyway, one day I got on my bicycle, and my shiny blue bicycle, absolutely rigid with excitement, and I cycled to Cowden, and I arrived at the nameplate Cowden on a metal sheet, and I reached out and touched the metal of the sign, and I suddenly realised it was rubbish. Though Cowden was real, they were all real. She was a real person, and the chance of her spending her life hanging around the village with an incapacitated bicycle waiting for some scruffy twit to rescue her pup. It was a terribly sad moment, and it was another lesson learned. It was hard, but it was really necessary, and mainly that I wouldn't find what I hoped for in fantasy. And in some ways that frightened me because I lived in my head so much.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, so it was really wishful thinking, wasn't it? You know, I mean, just for a little while, that something amazing would happen. It's interesting, really. I mean, I think sometimes with prayer, there's, it's really like wishful thinking. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. You know, when our kids were coming into doing an exam, and I would pray, and I'd say I was going to pray for them, and I would pray, and I caught myself praying with one occasion with one of my sons who'd done very little revision, that the right questions would come up that would fit in with the few things that he knew. And then I thought, you know what, that's not a prayer. That's just wishful thinking. Yeah. You know, the whole thing where kids come home from school and they say it was a great paper. You know, I knew everything on it. And you think, well, yes, but that's because you revised a lot of things. It's very, very easy, isn't it, to just
to unpick
get
that
confused
a bit more.
by that, really.
Saying, you could pray. You could pray for them to do their best.
Absolutely, pray for them to do their best. Pray for them to stay calm. Yeah. Pray for them to feel, even the one who hadn't done revision, that.
But bearing in mind C.S. Lewis's comment that, you know, if one man in one side of the road is praying for rain because he needs it, and the man on the other side is praying for sun because he needs it, God is probably going to say, look, you're going to get what you get.
Yeah, and actually the exam questions were created about 18 months ago, so the chances of me being able to intervene with the exam board and change the questions on the paper is a bit silly.
Yes, I mean, also, having said all that, I mean, we often quote, don't we, Matthew, and go into your room and like a child, and you, God knows what you need anyway. Yeah. But it's all right to say, I do wish my child would do well. Yeah. That's okay.
And I know at the school that our daughter works in, well, actually she isn't at the moment because she's on maternity leave, but they do pray before the kids go into exams, and the kids wait for the chaplain to come along. Oh, right. Now, what is that about? You could say it's superstition, because not all of them are believers by any means, but it's something more than that, isn't it? It's a feeling that maybe something more than them is involved with their lives. I don't know. I don't want to exaggerate that.
I like the fact that faith somehow becomes a part of the structure. Yeah. I can understand why that would, and I know that in that school, for some of those kids, that the intervention of faith in parts of their lives is really important. Yeah. And it isn't perhaps on presented in a way that it normally is. No, I think it's pretty good. Pretty good. So, any other memories? Well, what hope? Hopeless hope. You know, sometimes you see people or you hear of people who are still hoping for something that looks as if it's way beyond their
absolutely
their abilities or what is possible. And I was remembering at our children's school, they used to have the sports, of course. Like they haven't had them for a long time, have they? And The egg and spoon race.
Oh, well, it was potato and spoon, wasn't it?
Well, whatever it was. But I know we both have memories of this, don't we? And you remembered a little girl, and I remembered a little boy.
So one of us is right. That's good odds, really.
Might have been both, though, but at different times, because we had 4 children.
Absolutely.
But I do remember this little boy in particular, who was in a race. There must have been. It brings tears to my eyes even now when I think of it. There must have been 6 children in the race. Each one has got his spoon and his potato, which is supposed to be an egg, and 5 of them are battling for the winning line.
Yeah. And
behind them, quite a long way behind, comes this little boy, and he's holding his spoon with its potato on it as carefully as he can. And there's a big smile on his face, and he looks so excited because somehow he believes that somehow he could overtake all 5 of those others and win. I mean, all those people watching are saying, you're not going to do it.
Oh, but they're also proud of him because there he is, still trying, still keeping going. Yeah, I suppose that is a hopeless hope. But I hope, because I remember his mum looking with such pride on him, I hope he remembers it as a time when some hope was sort of fulfilled, really. He got to the end.
There is a magic in it, like the lady with the 2 coins in the temple, when Jesus said that they're worth more than anyone else. My hope is that people who go on trying and have that heart and spirit in them find that it actually has a value in them, because I think it probably does.
Yeah, and maybe just as much as winning a gold medal or a silver, although if we're talking about the Olympics, those things do matter a bit.
Right, surely do.
But of course, there's an example of hope being based not just on fantasy, like your wonderful desire to marry Hayley Mills, or this little boy with his potato, which seemed completely the wrong size or shape for his spoon and kept falling off. But people who've worked so hard. I'm thinking, I mean, I love the gymnastics. Somebody like Max Whitlock or I mean, Adam Beattie, in the pool every day, somehow managing to work really, really, really hard. But even then, even though they're building it on incredibly solid foundations, it can still be dashed. Well, wasn't it Tom Daly was saying you have 3 seconds or something between when you start your dive until when you finish your dive, and even though you've trained for 4 years, that could be it.
A lot of it must be to do with your head, what's going on in your head.
Yeah, but of course, you said about Christian hope, and our hope is supposed, in theory and in reality, although I'm not sure we all believe be to do with our efforts or our faith or our certainty.
A couple of commentators who said that Paul uses the word for hope a lot. He uses 2 words actually, but one in particular is, and they say, well, it is a certainty because those with the faith in God know that the resurrection of Christ promises all will be well. So my question is, why is the word translated as hope? Because I don't think that's how we see hope.
Right. Hope can be dashed.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah. I suppose, I don't know, I suppose it's because we know that this side of heaven, although we can trust in the certainty, we don't know it. So is that why it remains sort of hope?
I don't know.
I do know that going through this pandemic, we have been shaken. I think the whole world has been shaken. And we're more aware of the fact that what we saw as solid ground, even though we think and hope we're coming through this thing finally, but that anywhere and anything can be a minefield.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was thinking, Adrian, of... do you remember that area on the south coast where there are sinking sands?
Yeah.
And it came into my mind because I was thinking, here we are actually able to walk on the shore. Yeah. Some people in Portugal. Yeah. And but those sinking sands, you can step on an area that seems solid And it actually
there was
isn't.
some at Grange over Sands where I was.
Grange over Sands, yeah. Oh, were there?
Yeah.
Where you were working
very
last week?
ones, yeah.
And that's why. Do you know this hymn, Adrian? Have we got time? Yeah.
Yeah, read it.
But I do love these words. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus Christ, my righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name, on Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. And I know that you've said recently, Adrian, and I certainly have, that when everything else is shaking, you go back to Jesus and you think, that's a rock I can stand on.
Yeah, like Lewis says, go back to the man of a certain height, of a certain weight, who spoke Aramaic, that real person.
That solidifies things, and suddenly it's not some vague hope or some anxiety. It's a feeling, this I can trust, this I know.
I tried to think honestly, or answer honestly the question, do I hope all will be well with God in heaven and my eternal future and all that? This is my question, will the messy contents of my head ever settle down into something that fits neatly into all these clear ideas of hope or certainty?
This side of heaven? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. And sometimes I hope, sometimes I'm absolutely sure, and sometimes the shutters come down and the light has gone. But I also know that God knows the contents of my head, and I come very close to trusting that He will make sure things are okay.
Yeah.
Am I sure about that? Absolutely. I hope so. I really, really hope so.
Well, be good to hear from some of you what you felt about this, whether you're feeling full of hope, where your hope lies, what you put your hope in that maybe it got dashed, anything really. We love hearing from you, and we've loved the encouraging message that we had this week. So
see you next week.
See you next week. Goodbye.